Okay, now I'm going to talk about my texture hallucination. This is a visual hallucination that I see when I'm in a manic phase, and it's a hallucination that I'm not sure I ever would have seen without taking psych meds. I thought at one point that it was a side effect of a specific psych med I was taking. I've since seen it when not on that psych med, so it doesn't seem to be a simple side effect of a single psych med. But it's hard to tell. I definitely seem to see it when I have withdrawal from antipsychotic medication, when my dose is lowered on risperidone, for instance. I seem to have an increase in this hallucination. So it's really not clear to me to what degree I would be having this hallucination if it weren't for psych meds. It may very well be that I would be having this hallucination. I just don't know because I've only experienced it while on psych meds, after taking psych meds, and in the withdrawal of psych meds. So it's just difficult to know what's what in terms of how much of this hallucination would be going on, quote unquote, naturally. Um, let's see. I have kind of an outline for what I'm going to show you today, which I call the program and the effect. The program being a program I wrote in 2007, a computer program, and the effect being the hallucination, the visual hallucination that I see. If you want to look at these notes, which include links to the videos that I'm going to show you in this video, you can go to clownfish.com/notes. clownfish.com/notes. Fish spelled with a Y. That'll give you this outline, which has basically what I'm going to talk about today and links to some of the videos that I'm going to show you. So let's skip straight to some images of what this thing looks like. Okay, these are some images that show still frames of a program I wrote in 2007, and these images start to look like what this hallucination looks like. Now, they don't exactly look like it, because the hallucination that I see is monochromatic, and it's also very, very fine in its resolution or in its detail. It appears to me on several different scales. If I stand back and look at a wall, where I see this hallucination, I'll see it in big swatches. If I look into a piece of paper or into that same wall with my face very, very close to it, I'll see this hallucination in very fine print, so to speak. And it gets very fine indeed. If I look at a piece of paper which has a little bit of real existing texture on it, I'll see this texture hallucination, which appears as a moving texture upon a texture, on top of a texture, basically. I'll see it in extremely fine detail so that I almost have to squint to see the actual quote-unquote pixel level upon which it's occurring. So it appears as fine as, or as coarse as, the texture upon which it's appearing. So for a wall that has paint on it, there are some very coarse or broad textures that really do appear for anyone who's looking at that wall. And for me, this texture hallucination, when viewed at that kind of zoom level, takes on a zoom level that's consistent with the texture that you would already see on a wall. For instance, when you paint a wall using a roller, you end up with texture on the wall. It's really not the case that a wall has no texture, and especially a wall in a lighted room, it's definitely the case that when you look at that, you're not seeing a solid color. If you really look kind of discerningly, you see many, many colors, and they're arranged into swatches and zones, and that's what makes up the the seemingly solid color of the wall. I mean, this is clear that this is something that many people see when you look at the way painters paint, great painters paint solid surfaces. They never are really solid. There's a lot more going on there. And in this texture hallucination that I see, there's just even more going on there. So let's look at... So what are these images that we're looking at? These are still images from a program I wrote in 2007, which is the time that I sometimes propose that this program, quote-unquote, infected my brain, or was somehow intermingled with my brain's idea of mania. And these still images show you a little bit of texture, but let's go ahead and view one of these in a moving sense. Let's see here. So this is video output from the program I wrote. Now what you see here is an evolution of forms in a torus-shaped petri dish. It's like what I see on a wall. So normally there would be the texture of paint on a wall, or on a piece of paper there are the fibers of the paper. And then what I see on top of it is something not exactly like this, but very much like this. And in particular, the way that cells appear and delete themselves is very similar between this image and the hallucination that I see. The cells in this program talk to each other. They are having a cultural exchange. So before they decide to move around, they interact with each other culturally, and I don't know if that's happening in my hallucination or not, but there's something... This image here is the closest thing I can show you to the movement of the cells in my hallucination. They move very much like this. They appear and disappear, they group and ungroup, they just look a lot like this. Let's look at some other images. Here's an... I don't know if I want to play this whole thing, but... let's skip ahead to... Okay, that image that just came across, let's go back to that a little bit. Okay, this particular piece of video, it's a very quick segment in this cut, but right there, that's what it looks like. Let's go back. Okay, here it comes again. This hallucination is, it's swatches of movement. It's like ant colonies on crack. It's like clouds that are active at the pixel level. It's all of those things. It looks like this. You see those large swatches of movement. Like that green swatch that comes all the way through. Let's look at a little more video. This video is from a promotion I put together for a company I was working for, where we were using this program that I wrote to do artificial intelligence type work, and classifications and inferences. But these videos, I think, show, look at this one. It shows the type of movement that exists in this hallucination that I have. So it's a very cellular type of movement. Individual pixels turn themselves on and off. Let's look at some more of those videos. Individual pixels turn themselves on and off, but there's an overall movement that's happening. That right there, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. Although it moves slower than this. In my version that I see, it moves much slower. So instead of those very rapid flows of information, it's like it's kind of tinkering along in slow motion. But that's pretty much what it looks like. And if you've tripped on LSD or mushrooms, you'll see that these images are very different than the types of textures that you see when you trip on those substances. And so when psychiatrists have suggested to me that perhaps my drug use is responsible for my hallucination, I'm not sure that that's the case. It may be. I certainly accept that possibility. But I'm not really sure that that is the case. Because the hallucination I see really looks like these images I'm showing you from this program I wrote, and not like LSD or mushroom hallucinations at all. So let's go through this document and see. So I've showed some video of what it looks like. It looks like that, except monochromatic and slower and much higher resolution. And it's slightly three-dimensional. It looks like a texture relief on top of a subtle texture. For instance, the fibers on the paint on a wall. It doesn't look just like something has been drawn on top of the existing texture. It looks like there is a new texture placed on top of it. So in the case of paper fibers, when you look at it, a piece of paper with this hallucination, when I look at a piece of paper having this hallucination, I can see the fibers in the paper, and then on top of that I see what looks like another physical visual layer of moving texture on top of it. So it looks like it has some dimension to it. What else? I think that covers what's in the first section. I wrote this program coincident with a significant manic episode. I wrote this program in 2007 during a manic episode covering 7 days of reduced and no sleep nights, during which I watched The Truman Show on repeat and created the program. This was immediately prior to my first psychiatric hospitalization, which occurred at the close and the crash of the 7-day period of obsessive technical creativity and intense enjoyment of the abstract logic underlying the program. I was drinking, I was watching The Truman Show, I was programming, and just doing all of these things in the tightest loop possible, staying up not sleeping, just kind of zoning out on the couch to watch the Truman Show. That was my substitute for sleep, and um, and creating this program, which I was fascinated with. It was a breakthrough for me to be able to create this type of cultural genetic interaction between these little cells that were operating inside my programming world, and and I envisioned great things for what they might be able to do. At the end of the 7-day period, I called the suicide hotline, and that's how I ended up in the hospital. The effect, when I have this hallucination, it's not only visual. It is primarily visual, but is accompanied by some other effects. It's accompanied by a partial erasure of the line between appropriate and inappropriate. So it's the case when I'm having this hallucination that I'm unable to determine or know which potential behaviors of mine and actual behavior of mine and others is appropriate and which is inappropriate by moral and social standards. So when I'm experiencing this effect, there's an erasure of the line between appropriate and inappropriate. There's a kind of a moral absence there, and so it's difficult for me. For instance, I remember having this conversation with a art therapist, or like a creative arts therapist of some sort, at the Brattleboro retreat one time while I was having this hallucination, and I realized, kind of with horror, that I was unable to, and I was going to be unable to keep my conversation with her appropriate and keep my behavior with her appropriate. You know, something that I normally count on being able to do very naturally, I suddenly realized was slipping from my grasp. It is accompanied by a dimming or disengagement of inhibitory function, so much more than is normal for me while having this effect occur, seeing this hallucination and experiencing the rest of the effect. I engage in the inappropriate behavior that comes to mind. So also a function that's very strong with me, the inhibitory function, is something that is quite weakened when I'm experiencing this effect. And it seems to be, the effect seems to be accompanied by a blurring or distorting of the memory function. So later on, when I remember events that occurred during the effect, the memories seem incomplete and dreamlike. And this is definitely the case with the effect itself. It took me the longest time to convince myself that it, quote-unquote, was real, or that I was really hallucinating, you know, and you're splitting hairs and getting into some sorts of semantics when you talk about what it means to really be hallucinating or not, you know, since it's by definition a not real type of event. But it's definitely the case that when this effect is occurring, when I remember events that occurred later on when I remember events that occurred during the effect, the memories seem incomplete and like they were from a dream. So it's hard for me to remember, or it's hard for me to tell if I'm remembering something that happened, or if I'm remembering something that was from a dream, you know, that was made up or hallucinated. And then lastly, I just have several speculations that go along with the effect for me. So I'm not, especially when I'm not manic, I'm not proposing that these things are true. I'm just speculating that perhaps they're true. When I'm manic, I believe that these things are true, and I'm quite certain of them. And I presented this document that I have to a couple of different psychiatrists in various forms, and one of the statements that I received, where is this? From one of my doctors, I'll just read it. During the course of the hospitalization, the Risperdal was increased as the patient continued to have some overtly psychotic ideation and presented me with many notes which confirmed his psychotic thought process. So when presenting that particular psychiatrist with notes about this theory and these speculations that I have about the program and the effect, her determination was that those notes confirmed his psychotic thought process, which I found very interesting. Anyway, here are some of my speculations. My brain is playing back the program either in source code format or something like that, or in terms of visual memory, replaying something similar to videos of the program's output. So I'm speculating that either the program has infected my brain or have been injected or programmed into my brain in some way in source code format, such that my knowledge of the program and writing the program has made it so that my brain can run the program without a computer. That's the speculation that I'm saying there. My brain is running this program. That's the kind of more out there speculation that goes along with this set of ideas. And then the weaker form is that in terms of visual memory, it's replaying videos of the program's output. It may be that because I've spent so much time looking at videos of this program's output, videos like the video I just showed you, that it's been burned into my eye, it's been burned into my visual thinking, the way these cells move and interact. And so somehow, when I'm having this hallucination, my brain uses that knowledge that was gained from watching videos of this to recreate something similar to it. So it may not be that my brain is running the source code to this program, but it may just be that by looking at videos, I become familiar with how this program runs and what it looks like, and I'm hallucinating some sort of a rough playback of the way that this program looks. Next speculation. The triumvirate of the program, the effect, and mania are somehow associated in my mind. So these things have somehow come together in the way that I've gone crazy. This program that I wrote, the hallucination that I'm having, and my experience of bipolar mania are somehow all wrapped up together. And lastly, I am in some way, it seems, controlling the appearance of the effect. It seems more prominent, or it appears at all, when I am excited, irate, hypersensitive, or when I am looking for it. When I'm not looking for it, it tends to go away. When I am looking for it, it tends to occur. So it tends to appear when I am excited, irate, hypersensitive, when I'm manic, essentially. It appears when I am experiencing other experiences, experiences of mania. And within that, if I tend to look for it, I can find it. If I'm not looking for it, it tends to go away. So even if I am feeling irate, hypersensitive, excited, manic, etc., there's a degree to which if I stop looking for it, it goes away. And that's all I'm going to say about that.